Voice, energy, and cycles. All three of these things have a lot in common. They look separate at the start, and then you start thinking more deeply and you realize, oh my goodness, they're all connected. They are versions of each other, even. And it's one of the things that fascinates me about voice, and one of the reasons why I'm always comparing it to energy and energy archetypes and the cycle and how it is speaking to clarifying and even amplifying the cycles of our body, our breath, our life. So we'll start a little bit of an explanation on how I decided to come up with this thing. First of all, because it had all of those different elements going on. Every time I saw somebody frustrated with what was going on in their story, in their relationships, in their life, for me, it always came back to this one concept. Well, if you knew who you were, if you knew how you wanted to express, and if you understood what part of that expression is becoming and can be, and what would that look like when you do it, then a lot of this would be an answered question. And a lot of us are trying to do things on linear systems that can only work one way in one direction. And I'm going to make another video on the difference between linear process and exponential process, because if you're only going linear, then you're missing out on a ton of wisdom and possibility when you are moving into a new venture, creation, relationship, whatever you're trying to create in your life. And so I made this chart so that we can start seeing the correlations, because we all have our ways of tracking cycles. So if you can find at least a couple of those in this chart, you're going to start to put a lot of things together. Winter is the same feeling in all the different cycles. It's a season of cessation and what I think of as release. So you can see that in the chart itself. So first I'm going to start with a couple things like, what's a cycle? Why are we talking about cycles? Well, cycles, whatever you can put into a circle and that you can expect on the other side, that next part of the cycle is going to happen. After winter, we expect spring. After spring, you can expect summer. All right. After summer, you can expect fall. Now, you might have variations on those seasons, like this year's winter may not look like last year's winter, and it sure won't look like the winter 20 years ago because global warming. But but there's still going to be a process that's going to move us through a winter, a spring, right? And in cycles, when because of that, you can make certain plans, right? You can know that, oh, in the spring, at least where I live, I can expect more dot, dot, dot. So rain, winds, flowers. Like, what is that for you, right? And it's the same thing that in your body you can keep track of. So cycles are very important because they're going to tell you what signs, things you can look forward to and or expect to support or expect to need support in when you get to that part of the season or cycle. And then there's the energy portion. So energy is everything. Like, it was one of the first things that I decided was my cornerstone. If I wanted to know if something was true, I would look at the energetic version of it, because we're all made up of energy. Everything has cells, everything has atoms, everything has divisions of energy that make it up. So at its base, the base truth for me is that there's a creation, we are living in that creation, and every part of creation is made up of energy. So if that's the stuff that God chose to make up the things, then I want to know what that is consisting of and what happens with that stuff. And so that's where I really got interested in science at first, and then in astrology and crystals Crystals have their own very slow cycles, right, of how they pick up on the different seasons and patterns and several things. So now I'm really into gene keys and human design. And I've been working with gene keys for about 5 years now, and energy work, information, energy work, and vibration, archetypes from all kinds of cultures. I've been looking into these things for about 7 years now. So let's go to voice. So, voice is voice. It's another cornerstone for me because it is telling us 1,000 different things. But first, we can look at the way I talk about voice, because most of us only are thinking about voice as how we are outwardly projecting to others. So, how are we talking? How are we singing for others? And I think of voice as first and foremost a tool for yourself. And I think of it as a restorative tool of presence and a possibility of experiencing your own cycles of creation, of taking nothing to something. And our first ability to do that of using breath, which we can not always perceive as just air, right? Of going from breath to a thing that we can make that other people can witness in their senses of hearing and respond to. So I call that the first sensible emanation that comes from nothing or thought or energy, but perceived in a way that everybody can have a perspective on it. So I think of it as the first step of creation and the fastest way to practice creation and manifestation. So let's talk about these cycles, y'all. So there are, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 cycles on this chart, and there's a ton more. It starts with breath. Why is breath important? Because you need more breath than anything else in your life. You run out of breath, you're not going to make it more than a few minutes. If you run out of water, you've got days, right? You run out of food, you've got like a month or so, right? Depending on the health of your body beforehand. So, when we think about the most vital element to us as human beings, it's our breath. So, starting there to start paying attention to your cycles is a grand idea. Breath in and breath out. And actually, when I start with breath, I usually start with a breath out and then breath in for my process. So, that in and of itself is a multitude of things. There's an entire practice is built from breath work that if you really pay attention to your breath and you start using different ways of experiencing your breath, you get to experience the energy of your body and your auric field, how you are this kind of continuum and transmitter and channel for energy. And it can lead you to amazing places if you do intense breath work because it's the basis for our existence and vitality. And so there's so many things that can be fixed if you start with breath. And it's something we should all know more about. It's how we survive minute to minute. So we should think more about it. The next part of the cycle, we're coming from the in out, and then we've got the next one, which is voice, right? So breath can and does become voice. So when we're using our breath to emanate sound, we often are breathing out and, well, you can't speak with breathing in. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a whole mindset shift in order to do that. You can speak breathing in, and you can actually sing breathing in too, but we are used to doing it breathing out. And so it's our flow is when we're using sound outward. And then as that sound finishes, we're releasing back to breath. It's going back to breath, right? And then we breathe in. That's our restoration part of the cycle. And then when we start the sound, it's whatever vowel words, consonants we're using to bring into life that breath. And so, if you study that cycle, you can study what comes up for you when you are creating anything. But especially with around our voices are the next thing on the evolutionary cycle to literally showing our faces and breathing, right? So we can't participate in society, we can't be fed, we can't feed our families if we cannot communicate in some way, shape, or form. And so our bodies know this on an evolutionary level, and it will prioritize voice, it will prioritize breath. If you stop breathing because you're surprised or you're trying to be funny or whatever, your body will knock you out to get back to your breath cycle, right? You'll pass out. That's so that your automatic nervous system, your involuntary nervous system, will kick in and take care of you. And if we aren't able to use our voice, if we aren't connected to how our voice is working or not working for us, then we might be missing a big piece as to why things aren't manifesting, going as planned in our lives. The next part of the cycle is the moon cycle. So this is a 28-day cycle. And so this is another way of tracking, like, how are things going for you in the process of your life? How are things going day to day? And a full 28-day cycle for pretty much everybody is going to tell you your true perspective on something, your true, like, what works and what doesn't. If you think about one thing over that 28 days and just concentrate on that, you're going to have a great amount of information on how you feel about it, how you perceive it being understood or felt in the world, how you are most capable of realizing or improving whatever you're thinking about at that time. And it's a beautiful way of paying attention to how you are shaped throughout a cycle. It's the moon orchestrates our waters and it orchestrates our body and therefore our emotions and therefore our energy. And it's vital for us to pay attention to how those ebbs and flows happen in our lives, just like they happen in the ocean. So, the moon is a very beautiful place to also start understanding our connection with the world and the universe and how we are natural elements in that universe and we are impacted by that universe. So, the next part of the chart, the next circle is the menstrual cycle. Yeah, so that's the next closest cycle in my mind, right? Because the average, not everybody's, but the average menstruator is menstruating around a 28-day or more. Like usually like 28 to 40 days, and a little less, a little bit more. And that is not going to be exact same for everybody or exact same every time. So one of the things that's great about being able to track and know your menstrual cycle or the cycles of the moon. So maxing, full moon, waning, new moon. If you're able to track that, you're going to be able to track your expressive movements throughout that time. Are there times when you're hungrier? Are there times when you're sleepier? Are there times when you feel like you can take over the world? Are there times when you feel like you just want to crawl up in a ball on the bed and take a nap for 2 days, right? Like, we all have versions of this at different parts of that 28-day cycle. If you're not a menstruator, it might be a good idea to check out your cycles around the moon, because I promise you, you have hormones and you have a cycle that is living out this experience. And if you are blessed to be a menstruator, then you have an amazing tool to also tell you how your body's doing, how healthy is your body, how much are you maybe improving your health if that's something you're trying to do, or if you feel like you're all of a sudden your health is declining. A lot of these things will show up first. I mean, if you're paying attention, you'll find those things start to go offline in your breath. That'll be the first indicator. The second indicator is your voice. Your voice is going to probably possibly be losing your voice. You might be just really harsh on the voice. You might just feel like you're vocally tired. But the voice is another very immediate thing. If you're not drinking enough water, your voice is going to tell you. If you're paying attention, if you know your cycles, if you know how that works for you. And then the next thing is your 28-day cycle. A fabulous way to get to know yourself and to track how you are becoming, right? And then I just jumped a whole whole bunch of stuff and just went straight to the seasonal cycle. So you can see that seasonal cycle within the year that we spoke about in the beginning of winter, spring, summer, and fall. And what you get to realize in that living of each of these cycles is that they're very similar. At the top in your peak of your energy, you might feel like you're on top of the world, right? That's what's important. Whatever else is other than that, who cares? Goodbye. Full moon. Okay. Initiation of voice. If you're not feeling that way, if you're not feeling that way, if you're not in that highest energy, highest excitement, release into the what's next of what you decided to make spoken and heard, then initiation of voice might not feel as as uplifting. But and the full moon. If you're not tracking your cycles, if you're not really paying attention, and you try to put things under the rug for a while, the full moon is not going to feel wonderful and full of life. It's going to feel overwhelming, and it's going to make you want to hide a little bit, right? So if you know that about yourself and your cycle, then you'll realize, okay, what have I not what am I not realizing about my cycle that I'm not getting to my peak energy during full moon or ovulation, right? And all of our cycles as well can look a little bit different. And we might only have, 6 hours of full moon energy, as opposed to the next person who may have 4 days of full moon energy. So it depends on who you are and the body that you're living in. And then, of course, your health. Um, Whether you get to feel the fullness of life, the fullness of those extremes, And then the other side of that is feeling more like you want to rest or you're done with something and um, you want to try something new. That's our other side of the new moon. You want to try something new, or you want to add something in, or you want to look at something else, like another component of what you're working on or working through or creating. Yeah. So that is our quick version of voice, energy, and cycles. And I hope it helps you create a way of tracking, knowing, and understanding yourself and all your vital cycles. I'll see you next time.